If it's retail, you really need to find that what is that next step. When I design, I normally work with looking at three aspects. In the center hall, reflective, because what we wanted to create was the effect of, I think, each place have taught me something. Like in the US, you have a lot of spaces that are, like for me, it always shocked me how in Hong Kong, but I guess what I got from it was, for me, is really understanding also the business side. So I think the most that I learned from my master's is that you want to create something that is beautiful. A good story is one that has form follows function. I don't have a particular favorite art style. Define how and why you use the spaces. The one thing that I would love, and this is for me in every single showroom,
Today we welcome a woman whose work not only shapes spaces but gives them a soul. Veronica del Castillo is an interior architect and designer born in Cartagena, Colombia, and trained in the world's design capitals from New York to Milan to Hong Kong. She uniquely combines Latin American craftsmanship with international sophistication. Her philosophy, interior design is a vessel for stories. She has worked for major names and realized impressive projects. Welcome, Veronica.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here.
Thank you so much. The AP House Zurich is not only architecturally impressive, but also creates a completely new customer experience, especially at a time when brick-and-mortar retail is under pressure. What is needed today for physical retail locations to be more than just sales spaces?
So the AP House we did with my previous company when I was working at Carbone, interior design. And when we got the project, it was a competition. And it was very challenging because it was this beautiful old building. It was a bank hall. It was so impressive and also quite like it's a challenging space in the sense that it was so grand. And what we were asked to create was something that felt more residential and more personal, and that would translate from the retail aspect of being more transactional to a space that was more familiar and intimate. So I think when we first got the competition and I started working on the concept, I realized we had to create something that was very true to Zurich and to the building, that told different stories, and that we had to approach it in a way that was from the client journey. So when you enter the space, how can we create something that is increscendo in a way that as you walk in, you go more intimate and close to guide the person so that it didn't feel like it was this humongous hall with a beautiful ceiling, extremely tall, that you would feel intimidated. And I think we created something beautiful. Also, the strategy from AP is really to bring people to feel like they're part of that family, and that when you're in an event, you can find closure, that it can be an intimate setting of 10 people or 200 people in a party, and that you still feel that sense of intimacy. So we did that by being very respectful. I think we achieved a nice way through being respectful with natural materials, materials that really have a sense. Like there's a beautiful natural trunk table that we had to source dry. It was a whole process. We used liquid metal instead of like lacquered surfaces. We tried to go with warm wood spaces that created this like intricacy. And we tried to invert, like, yes, there's a beautiful watch cellar that makes it, it's unique, it's grand. You see the pieces like as they're more art, because they are these beautiful crafted watches that at the end of the day There's so many people and so many craftsmanship that goes behind that we really needed to showcase it as a beautiful centerpiece. And then once you go into the spaces, they are more like visiting a hotel or being in a living room of a person's house. It doesn't matter if you are in that specific retail areas, to break that bit of transactional. And I think on the retail spaces, you want to create spaces that become more experiences, that it's intentional, that when you walk in, you don't need to have the budget or the grandeur of the space, but you want to really create something that feels more grounded and connected, and I feel just simply crafted, whether it's a beauty salon, as you were like mentioning before, or a coffee shop. If it's retail, you really need to find that what is that next step, that you're gonna tell a story, that you're gonna have a material that is worth seeing and touching, that you don't have online, for example.
I mean, the story's amazing. And how did you approach the project?
So we did, when I design, I normally work with looking at three aspects. So there is a social aspect, a historical aspect, and a physical aspect to create a concept. This I learned when I was working in Miami, and ever since I've kept it with me. So this gives you like a very grounded concept, and one that becomes like a solid story to be intentional. So in the social aspect, we focused more on the craftsmanships, the materials, what materials are being used for the manufacturing, what does AP stand for? Because at the end, the social experience that you would have was what the brand has to give out. And that was that gives us the metal, that gives us the black stone, that gives us the wood that we are talking about for the dining table, and the reflective surfaces as well, because that's what you have at the end product. Then the historical aspect clearly was the architecture of the space. So we had to work with it, and we wanted to create something that reflected and enhanced the architecture instead of fighting with it. And then on the physical aspect, we focused more on the Lake of Zurich and the rivers, essentially, that brings all the reflections of the cities. So that's why all the materials are so, in the center hall, reflective, because what we wanted to create was the effect of, there's this beautiful river that crosses the city and lake, and you always see the reflection of the buildings and the lake. So let's bring in reflective materials that reflect the building, and then when you go to the sides of the store, you have all the houses, the same as you have in the Lake of Zurich. So that's something that you don't see, and you probably did not know, although you've been in the space before. But it gives you, exactly, it gives you that feeling of intimacy. Exactly. So I think what we did very successfully was really to create an intention for it, and I guess that was like the first approach. And from there, I mean, we worked with very beautiful and talented craftsmen and brands that are very tailor-made to create something that you cannot find anywhere. Everything from the height of the sofas to, and like always very customer-centric. So we wanted to really make something intentional that was very important for the brand, and that was very important for me as well, and for the retail architecture team of AP. Is how is the customer going to feel in this space, and how are we going to use the space?
Amazing. Veronica, you were born in Cartagena, Colombia, and have worked in cities like Hong Kong, New York, Bogota, Miami, and Milan. How have these international experiences shaped your style approach?
I think each place have taught me something unique. I think from Milan, there I was studying, and I learned much more on the refinement and somehow that elevated, clean lines, Italian style, something like really looking at the craft and the quality of each material. I think even in Italian cooking, you see that. It's not necessarily the most elaborate plate, but it's a great tomato. And it's the most special burrata. So I think that's something that I kept with me. I think in Hong Kong, it's such a busy city. I was there also, it was part of my studies. And what I learned from there was like how to do from something small, something beautiful. It's like the luxury in the small scale. And like creating spaces that, although the city was so chaotic, there were some spaces that you would enter and it was so zen. It was clean. It felt like a little temple in the city, and how to try to achieve that in interior spaces. Colombia, that's my main inspiration. I think in Colombia, what I learned the most was the beauty of true materials and what's handmade. I think the vernacular architecture of Colombia is very true to the landscape. Yeah. So we are a very diverse country. It depends a lot if you're in the coast or in the center of the country. The architecture is extremely different. Yeah. But it's always true to the materials that are local and with the climate of the space. So I think that's something beautiful for me that impacts my design a lot, that I want to be conscious of where what I'm designing is, more than what design style or trend I need to follow. And from the US, let's say Miami and New York together, it's this concept-driven, intentional design. Like in the US, you have a lot of spaces that are, because of the nature of how the country has developed with not a lot of history. There's a lot of new buildings. It's a lot of white boxes or malls, or we did cruise ships a lot. At the end, it's a vessel. And you have to create the full concept that goes inside to really give a customer or the person that is going to live through the space an intention of it. So I think with this combined, you have a very nice approach to design.
It's a lot. Amazing. And your career also took you to Hong Kong, where you worked on a project for Art Basel. Can you tell us about that and how you approached the project?
It was a student project. It was very cool. So we created, it was an installation. It was the first time doing an installation. And lately, I've been wanting to go more into that realm. Okay. I'm looking for some opportunities to see how to go a little bit more into the art world. What we did, it was like, for me, it always shocked me how in Hong Kong you have so many lives and cities that you see through the windows. Like you stand and then there's this high-rise building, things we don't have in Switzerland, with hundreds of families living. And it's thousands within a square meter. That, I mean, you stand in the street and you see all these buildings and there's all of these lives behind. So we created, it was a very simple installation inspired by the scaffoldings, and then we have this crystal, like this plexiglass windows that fell, and we recreated the landscape of Hong Kong with the windows, and they moved with the light. So at night it looked very different than during the day, and it was just representing the lives behind these windows. And there, I think what I learned from it, it was like how to create something that it was interesting for locals and foreigners. Actually the team was half foreigner, half girls living from Hong Kong. We were 4. And how to work with what we had. It was a student project. So it was really walking the streets from Chipo, that was like the area where the school was, sourcing materials, seeing what we had, and creating something that turned out to be very cool, very nice, and it had like a very good reaction. But like really working with your immediate network, what's around you, and bringing what local is, instead of like going, sometimes you don't have to look far to find the real solution that you need.
Amazing. And in addition to your training in interior design, you completed a master's degree in fashion experience and design management in Milan. How does this training influence your approach to interior design?
I think when I did the master's, I was doubting if I would change more into like marketing or PR, working in a retail architecture team for a brand. And at the end, I decided to stay in my career, but I guess what I got from it was mostly the approach of one, understanding my clients, understanding how their businesses work, what is it that they're looking, what is the customer-centric design, because when you can understand also the production, you can understand what merchandising is, what buying is, the different roles within a team. You can start working suddenly with different teams within a brand, and I get the same language of what they're trying to do. So when you bring it, the master's was very focused on fashion and then luxury hospitality, which is now where I do most of my work. And what is beautiful from it for me is really understanding also the business side. I guess when you go to a creative university, at the end of the day, you learn a lot about creating these beautiful things or functional. There's a lot into design, but they don't teach you a lot about the business and how to manage it and how to speak with your clients also in a business language. And I think, which is so important. It's the basis for whatever you do. If you don't have it, you fail. Exactly. So I think the most that I learned from my master's was more than like the practical. There's no class that I could be like, I'm doing this one-to-one. I have friends that were lawyers that went into merchandising. Great for them. But for me, it's the abstract. And saying like, okay, now I understand, I can speak business, I know what a P&L is, I can make it work. And it also has changed the way that I approach projects in the sense that I'm a lot more budget conscious, timeline conscious, also so that I know what to offer to my clients and say, okay, with what you want, with what you have, this is the situation, this is what we can achieve. And bring projects to a more realistic point of view, which has been great. I love it so far.
You describe interior design as a vessel for stories. What does that mean to you specifically, and what makes, in general, a good story for you?
I love this question. I think I answered it already with the AP store, AP house a little bit. But I think you don't have to bring it to a huge scale. This can be your house, it can be your home. And I think the main mistake that many designers do, and also people when you're doing your homes or your spaces, is that you want to create something that is beautiful as a Pinterest board. It's perfect. And then there's no intentionality in the design, doesn't tell a lot about your personality, how you live the space, and what story that creates. So for me, stories when it comes to design, or even we're here with like beautiful stones, is you need to make intentional decisions. You need to understand how you're going to use that space, what the space means for you. Don't destroy everything you had and bring everything new. Say, okay, I have this beautiful vase that I bought when I was traveling to Italy. It can be across the border, and it holds a special like memory in my head. Let's work with it. Let's bring it in, because that tells a story. So for me, a good story is one that has a soul. It's one that has like a memory or brings some sort of emotion, and that you can relate to. And that for me, that's enough. It's like it's something that has to be relatable, and you can share with whoever is in the space in a positive way. Like now that you say I understand the AP house better, it's like beautiful. I gave you something new. You don't have to see it, but you felt it, and you say now like, I get it. It's the aha moment. That's a good story. That's a strong story. It's not creating like Disneyland. This is the story that is going in. That's great. for a theme park, but for a different sort of space, you want to create something that is subtle, that it's there. And when you see it, it's like, great.
I think this also answers my next question, which is, what is your recipe and secret creating beautiful and purposeful spaces, sorry.
Yeah. And I think for that, like the one thing that I would add is be very conscious of the function and how you're gonna leave that space. So, because you can also have a beautiful story, but if you created something that doesn't match how you're gonna use the space, then it's not gonna be a nice space. You're gonna change it. Yeah. So be conscious. This is how I live. This is what I want to do with this store. This is the services that I will provide, and let's design around that. Form follows functional always.
And Veronica, what inspires you? You said without art, a design is not completed. Can you elaborate on this, and how do you integrate works of art into your projects?
So for me, art is not only a painting or a sculpture. Art is any form of craftsmanship, is anything that is also in an interior context. Is we were talking before, a vase that is made by an artisan somewhere in Italy, that's a form of art. We're talking about a beautiful textile that it's woven by hands that creates something beautiful. It's about a rug that is also made by a craftsman. It's about even the placing of the stone. Sometimes it's so, you need really a high craftsman to be able to create some beautiful details around it. So that's why I feel that without art, there's no real design. And art many times is that finishing touches that bring the stories to life. It's the last element. So as a designer, many times we create the vessel, we create the space, and then the art is that like finishing touch that brings that intentionality and layer to it.
And who's your favorite artist, and what's your favorite art style or art era?
I don't have a particular favorite art style or era, because I guess I appreciate different types of art. And as I said before, art can come in forms of furniture, it comes in different forms of expressing ourselves. I do have two favorite artists. They're both Colombian. And one is Olga Amaral. She does beautiful textiles, many with gold or silver leafing, and she just has a very nice way of creating depth with texture, and I find it very inspiring. Also, like she's not using any sort of form. She's not drawing an element or a person. She's really creating art with light, texture, and the use of some reflective surfaces. And the second one is Ana Mercedes Hoyos, which I love. She uses a lot of colors from the coast of Colombia. She is very famous for these beautiful portraits of palenqueras that are, it was during the colonial times in Cartagena. They created some like the slaves would escape to these towns that were called cabildos, and one of them that is very famous is Palenque, and it's this woman that when I was growing up, they sold fruit in their heads, and it's beautiful. It's so simple, like she portrays something that was such of like my normal life growing up, that I guess that's why I love it. And she uses beautiful colors. She also has this beautiful fruitscapes. Like it's just this artist that brings me home, that the colors as a Colombian brings me life. I love it. Not many people love colors, but this is something like if you have a beautiful calm interior and you have one of her paintings, it's like it fills the space with light and color, which I find very interesting. So those would be the two.
At the beginning, you told me something about your experience in Hong Kong. And I have a question for small rooms. What do you recommend to visually enlarge A small room.
Light. No, really. I think not all forms of light are most important, natural and artificial. I think also using materials that reflect or refract light. So using maybe going for a more like polished surfaces or stones or high lacquer surfaces. Also creating visual connections and flow in the space. So maybe it's furniture that is more on stands or legs than heavy furniture that grounds you, so that you can create that visual connection and flow. I think once you do that, it gives you a lot of, if you have nice lighting and you have very airy and light furniture, the space will immediately look brighter and bigger.
You emphasize the importance of layering, the layering of materials and colors. How do you implement this in your designs and why?
I think it's what I've been like bringing through. I think the layering is what makes a difference from a design space to an intentionally designed space. I like to combine different materials that are not commonly combined. I love to bring in the art. I love to bring in the textiles. I love to bring in these elements that tells a story that is going to make the space feel more unique and true to the brand or to yourself. Doesn't matter if it's a hotel, a private client, or a commercial client. But I think it's not forgetting the details. It's not about just putting a coffee table, a carpet, and a sofa. Everyone can do that. It's really bringing in what makes us unique: a beautiful lamp, a beautiful throw blanket, some very crafted pillows, a nice vase. Like, it's these layers that bring a space from okay, this is nice, to I want to stay here. Tell me more.
Yeah. And if you could give just one tip to someone who wants to redesign their home, what would it be?
I feel that I'm like repeating myself from before, but I think it's define how and why you use the spaces. Many times I get called by clients that say, I want this. I saw this picture in a magazine or from a friend's house, and this is how I want my house to look. Can you do something similar?
Like a Pinterest picture.
Exactly, this is the Pinterest board. At first I would be like, send me the Pinterest board. I'm like, no, now I start my consultations so different. Like, I tell them, look, how do you use this space? What is your culture? Who lives here? How do you have kids? Do you don't have kids? Do you plan to have kids? If it's a religious person, what are your traditions? Because there's things that I don't know. Like, at the end of the day, like, you grow up with certain customs that are so different from your clients that it's important to know. So I think when you're very clear and you say, look, this is, I don't know, for me, it's extremely important to have a space that is free for my kids to run. I want materials that are durable. I want this, and I don't know, I want something that if it spills, I don't care, but I also want to have these beautiful dinners at home that for me it's very important to do Martha Stewart style table settings or whatnot. Then once you have that defined, you can select the right materials, furniture. The rest starts to flow and follow because you're designing for your needs and not through a Pinterest board that you thought it was nice. And it's funny, many times people change the styles and then they end up happier. But it's the nature. We follow trends. And I think with so much media, there's like, I mean, Instagram. Yesterday I was in shock. I'm like, 2 hours in Instagram. I'm like, what did I do?
Why?
Why? And probably I scrolled half an hour here, half an hour there. I was looking something for a client, and then that led me to something else. We're all the time, there's so much information that influences us that it's important to like take a step back. Do I want that? I think I'm very
Or what are you watching the most? It's like also interior things, or maybe cooking or recipes.
I think I'm very targeted now for baby products, which is crazy. No, but I love like florists and tablescapes, like a lot of cooking and florists. Also, of course, interiors. It's there. But I'm like the most target that I have, which is funny. It's like tablescapes, food, florists.
Okay.
I guess that's the layers. It's how you bring it to life.
Mostly the same.
Yeah, I guess so. Also, I want something lighter, you know? I don't necessarily want to see how to build things. I want to see something that it's nice and aesthetic.
Veronica, do you have a favorite natural stone tile you enjoy working with in your projects?
I love travertine. I think also we have a special, in Colombia, the stone that you see the most in the coast, they call travertino chiaro. That is also, it's travertine, it's a different type of travertine. And because I love the nature aspect of it, it's a very warm stone. It's one that there's like enough intricacy in it, but without being like overpowering. Like I feel it's a stone that is very noble. It's very easy to combine to different styles. It doesn't matter what the space is. Normally you can blend it, and it's very durable. And yeah, and I love exotic stones, but more for accents. And I think there you cannot say one, but I love the rare stone that normally you cannot put in a floor because it's so unique that you don't even have enough. And that I often, like when I visit quarries, I'm like, show me the weird stone. Show me the one that no one wants. Yeah, because at the end that's like beautiful for tables, for details, for a side tables I love. So I think exotic stones are always so interesting because it's that little different accent that tells a story that normally no one has. It's so rare, it calls the attention, and you're like, tell me more. It has a soul for itself. But I guess those two.
Veronica, do you like our showroom? Is there anything that stood out to you in a positive way, or maybe something you think we could improve?
No, I do like the showroom. I think you have the stones displayed. I arrived early, and I was just browsing around, and they're displayed in a way that it's very easy to see. Feel like the one thing that I would love, and this is for me in every single showroom, and I don't know if you have it here. I did not notice, but there's so much information that it's always good to have one space that it's more calm where you can have like mood boards. And I always find it nice. I often don't see it, and normally you bring your materials with you, but to have like some fabric samples, some metal samples, some basic cart, let's say, not necessarily they don't have to be partners, they don't have to be ultra special. But just to give you a feeling, you know, if you have how it matches exactly, especially when it's a private client, because I think as an interior designer or someone that is in the business, architects, etc., you always have a very clear mind of what you're looking for. But as a private person, when you're browsing around, it's hard to think what you have in your house. So sometimes you want to see it next to what's similar. You cannot bring your couch. You don't have that sample readily available. But if you have those comparisons, it's great. And I think the other, tip that I think it has to do more with the end client. It's nice when you can see what the stones are used for. Like, especially for the natural stones. If there's somewhere that you can, normally this is what the sales associate will tell you, but if some people prefer to browse on their own, that it can be, even if it's a little sticker that tells you, good for kitchens, good for floors, bad for stains, because like this can manage expectations. I think the hardest, and probably you have the same with some clients, is like, I love this looks beautiful, and you're like,
not for maybe the kitchen.
It's not the kitchen, exactly. Or they just told you they want to do a wine cellar because they love wine, and it's like the stone that stains the most. So that's again like being very truthful to what you're using the space for.
Very good feedback. Thank you so much. If any of our listeners or viewers would like to learn more about you or get in touch, what's the best way for them to do that? Do you have a website, an Instagram account, or any other platforms where people can reach?
Yes, I do have, I have Instagram. I have the personal and the studio account. If you want to get to know more about me, you can follow me on my personal account. It's vero.del-castillo, and the company account is studio.del-castillo. And also, I guess, the website, delcastillo.ch. You can always reach out, send me a DM, send me a direct message through the website, and that's the best way to contact me. And I would love to have a bigger community and give more tips in interior design.
Veronica, thank you so much for being here. You really inspires me, and I can't wait to see what you create next.
Thank you, and thank you for having me. It's been very great.